Alright, so we're going to talk about all the possible items in Smite that pertain to Neath. These are the only items in the entire game I believe you should ever even consider. Now, you should not buy these all every single game, obviously. In fact, you can't because there's only 6 items in a build, but like what I mean is, depending on who you go against, like what class of god, like a tank, an assassin, a hunter, whatever, depends on how you build. So generally, no matter what though, these 3 items are absolutely core. It's not so much that the Jotun's 10 penetration is why we get it. It's because the Transcendence converts uh, 3% of all of your mana from your god and from your items. So this item is cheap. It has 150 mana, it has 20 CDR, and it has 40 power. So we're getting 3% of 150 basically, and we're getting the extra 40. We're getting 10 flat penetration, which if they build no defense is plenty to kill somebody. And we're getting 20 CDR on top of the 10% CDR of trans. So with 3 items, you have 30% CDR, and if you pick up a blue buff, you now have 40% and you're capped. So these 3 items alone are more than enough to get you through most of the beginning phases of every match. You can see here that with just these items, we already have 159 power. That's insane in the beginning of a match, especially for physical. Most physical characters have between 200 and 300 power in a match, so we're almost at the cap of some gods. Well, the soft cap of some gods for different builds, because 400 is the hard cap. Anyways, now, if you're going against a team that has 1 tank and 2 squishies, and the tank is building a little bit extra physical defense, but not that much health, then basically this build is what you want to get. This item will mean that when you backflip and then auto, your auto is super boosted by 50% extra damage. And it'll also get you to your 40% CDR mark because it has 10% CDR. And 40 power is pretty standard for most physical items. It's kind of rare that it's 50 or higher. So it's a really well-rounded item. It's also going to give you a tiny bit of mana regen, assuming you ever needed it, but you won't because you have this, which when this is evolved, it gives you 1050 mana instead of 300, and all the other stats stay the same. So, anyways, well, the combo would generally be you're going to press 1 to root them, and then you're going to auto attack, and it's going to be a 50% stronger auto attack. And because you have Crusher, it's also going to apply a DOT that is 15% of 300 for 2 seconds. And it's also going to be the physical Soul Reaver. They just changed Heartseeker, so now it's 10 flat penetration. So all in all, we're sitting at 35 flat penetration, which no matter who you're going against is enough to kill them. We also get 200 mana from Heartseeker, which in turn goes to work with Trans, which in turn boosts our power. This item also has 75 flat power. It's one of the only items in the game besides Bloodforge that has high power like this. It does cost a lot of money, cost 3,100, which is why I list it as an endgame item. I list Hydras as a bit of an endgame item because it's not like needed to get your kills. Like these 4 items are needed to get kills against anyone you go against. But this one, I just prefer it because it makes my autos stronger when I'm building for ability-based damage. As you can read here, it's a percentage of the enemy's max health converted to physical damage, and since we have over 200 physical power, scale between 3 and 6%, and with this current build, it's probably at like 4-5%. Essentially, you'll be able to fight any squishy and solo them. You'll be able to fight any tank and solo them. You'll be able to team fight a little bit, but you will probably die if you focus on team fighting. You have no defense, and your only escape has a very predictable landing spot. Now, let's say you wanted to have a team fight build. What would you do? Well, you'd get these 3 core items, and then you'd go into this item right here. This is going to chain your auto attack damage between all the people standing around you. So every 4th basic attack triggers a chain of lightning, damaging the target and up to 4 nearby enemies for 15 damage plus 60% your total basic attack power. Our basic attack power is really strong on this build. And to make our attack speed higher so we get that 4th hit more often, we're already at 1.72, we're actually going to go ahead and grab a kin size. Well, okay, so this can go 2 ways. You can grab a kin size and an executioner and build this way for just Daka spam. And what this will do is the person you're initially hitting will have their protections debuffed over time, and all the other people you hit will just be damaged for the kin size damage. So it actually ends up working out, but you could also do this item, and then you could build crits. Now, this looks like a really stupid build, I know, but you have just enough attack speed that if you never miss and you play perfectly, it'll work. But you also have just enough crits that even if you do miss, it'll still work. But I don't really recommend attack speed Neath. Attack speed Neath is super shit. I recommend that first build I just showed you. Mana and power. Penetration. These other items I strongly recommend against, but if you absolutely had to, you could build a Blood Forage. I have no idea why you would, now that Heartseeker also gives you 75 power, but you could. I don't know why you would get Aussie, but you could. Defense on Neath is dumb, but this is the only one I would get if I had to get one. And, Titan's Bane is completely pointless unless you're fighting against someone who has focused their build against physical damage. Now you know how to play Neath. Alright, so this is going to be the Daji build guide and a general little strategy guide. These are all the items I recommend you build. This is the build I recommend you do. Now, generally, you're going to want defense on Daji. She's basically Loki. She can go teleport right onto someone, all in them, and then what? Now you're dead. That's pretty much Loki in a nutshell. So that's her issue too. So in order to help you get out, what you want to do is you want a little bit of defense. And I choose Spirit Robe, because if it's your only defense item, because you need the rest of your slots for power, this item gives you 15% additional damage mitigation for 3 seconds after you're hit by a hard crowd control effect. This effect happens every 15 seconds. This item is insane. It's 40-40. It is essentially like 2 different level 20 gods crushed together with their base protections. It's amazing. It gives you 10% CDR, so you're going to be overcapped when you buy this item on CDRs, to let you know, so ignore that stat. But it also gives you 20% crowd control reduction. That is better than most defense items in this game. You will get out of a stun 20% faster than anyone else. So the ability of the enemy to lock you down after you've all-inned their buddy is severely limited. The only way they're going to do it is if they chain multiple stuns on you all at once. That's the only way they're going to do it. So what I recommend, though, is that if you make it to level 20 and you have this build, I recommend you sell these boots, and then you buy the consumable called Elixir of Speed. And you have that. And now you have an extra damage item that you can get. And with this, you can get a defense hammer. Now these hammers give you health and power. They're amazing. This one makes you do 15% additional damage to anyone affected by a slow, for example. And since Daji has a slow and a pull on her ult, and a slow on her 1, this item synergizes with her kit perfectly. During your auto attack cancels of all-inning someone with your 3 auto attack, 1 auto attack combo, your 3 auto attack has a boost from the Hydra's Lament, and your 1 auto attack gets Hydra's Lament and the 15% Rune Foraged item boost. So your second auto attack in your combo will do an extra 65% damage. This is an absolutely nutty combination. You will instantly 1 combo any squishy in the whole game, no matter what they build. Unless, of course, they build some non-meta ridiculous meme thing where it's like all defense and no power. That's the only way they're going to survive you. And then you have your 2 to escape. You don't even have to use your 2 in the engagement if you have this build. All you need is a fully stacked trans, these items, and the ability to react quickly to a situation. Get it like this. Alright, this is a really good build. And then you can go into some defense. And then you can go into some more defense. Now this build might not get you all the kills, but you won't die as much, and you could definitely team fight with it. This item gives you 350 health. You're sitting at 2400 health. That's like what most hunters have, and you're an assassin. Typically assassins have less health than hunters, so this puts you in a pretty good position. This gives you just enough defense that you can box any hunter and win. Maybe not solo kill them, but you can do it. And that's pretty much how you play Daji. I'd recommend the first build though, if you're just starting out. This build is very difficult to use. This is probably a terrible, terrible build, but with the proper playstyle, this build will stomp. Alright, so we're going to talk about Bruiser Baron. Bruiser Baron is very controversial. Bruiser Baron has many different forms. I cannot give you a single build that will beat everybody, because the whole point of Bruiser Baron is that you counter build in defense for your enemies. So if your enemy is all physical, you get a lot of physical defense. If your enemy is all magical, you get a lot of magical. If they're both, you get both. It's way too much information to put into a short clip, but basically you get Book of Thoth, you get Shoes of Focus, you get an Ob Shard, and then past that you get whatever you feel is necessary. But this Book of Thoth allows you to convert some of your defense mana, because as you know, some defense items have mana in them, into power without buying power. So you're still getting power from an item that has no power when you buy it. It does work. It relies 110% on his passive. So his passive is whenever he hits an enemy with an ability and deals damage to them, it builds up a Hysteria meter on them, and when Hysteria reaches 100%, they take 20% additional damage from Baron's abilities. So, you can actually build this on every single person on their team separately. They're all tracked on a separate meter. The meter is located by their health bar. It's basically an exclamation mark of varying colors. When it's red, your passive will activate. When it is like purple or green or a yellow or whatever, it just means it's building up. So this is pretty much like Tank Fenrir, if you remember that. You can build all this defense and health on Fenrir, but still kill people, because his 2 is a power steroid that gives him plus 70% or plus 70 physical power for pressing a single button, but it's a temporary buff. Like this is also a bit of a temporary buff. So if you can hit all of your abilities and do damage constantly to your enemy, you will have no problem piggybacking off this passive. It will completely make up for not having power. In a typical Conquest match, you will be sitting between 400 and 600 power using a Bruiser Baron build. I hope this is helpful, and if you need to be taught how to actually play Baron in a match, just ask. Alright, so this is, in my opinion, one of the best warriors in the game. This is generally what you're going to want to pick if you are forced to play a warrior. This could be for Conquest solo lane, where the build will vary quite a bit from what I'm about to tell you, but if you understand the strengths of Chalk, that won't matter. You'll still be able to figure it out. This is for Joust primarily, or Arena, or any other non-Conquest game mode, where I feel he is best. Alright, so you're going to want to build your Warrior's Blessing. Now, you're going to get some pots, obviously, health and mana, and if you have gold left over, you can either get tier 1 of Jotuns for a little bit of power, or you can just try and rush boots. I personally recommend you rush a Jotuns. Chalk has natural defense that is quite a bit higher than anyone else in the game. As you can see here by like level 5, he's at 30-30. Most people are at like 20-20 or less. His health is also 1,000 by default. Like, he's pretty beefy for a low level. So, you can ignore your defense when the game first starts. Then you're going to want to build your boots so you can move around. And this Jotuns is also going to allow you to spam your abilities more often. It's going to allow you to heal more often because you have 150 mana on top of that 10 CDR, or 20% CDR. 10 flat penetration. You'll be able to kill the squishies, no problem. Your base damage on your number 1 is very high. It's very similar to a Scylla Crush or a Sun Wukong Tiger form. It's incredibly high base damage on a very spammable ability. Your 2, if comboed with the 1, can provide extra high damage. It's probably equivalent to like a Hou-Yi arrow that doesn't ricochet. So it's like 200-ish damage range. It's not the best. The 3 is just a self-heal with a slow attached to it. And it can be comboed with your throw and axe to make a giant AoE that's 100 units big of slows. Which is why we get into this item. Runeforged Hammer. Now, if you have a huge lead and you don't need to rush some defense and you're just stomping, just buy a Runeforged. You'll stomp even harder. Anytime you slow them, they'll just take 15% more damage for no fucking reason whatsoever, just because the item is broken. But if you have to get some defense, I would recommend you actually start building into a Gauntlets of Thebes. When this thing is maxed out with 50 assist stacks, you will get plus 50-50 defense. So you get plus 50 physical, plus 50 magical. It is very OP. Now, let's say you're starting to stomp, but you don't want to fall off, so you're not too sure what you want to build. We got you covered there. Build this bad boy. This thing is a tiny bit of power, a lot of defense, and it also decreases the enemy's physical protection by 20, further allowing you to focus and kill squishies. And anyone on your team benefits from this aura as long as they are close to you and you are close to the enemy. Let's say you wanted to be more passive, though. You wanted to just beef up and be way harder to kill. Get this. It's 350 HP, 200 mana, 35 power. This 35 power is about the same as any other physical item, so you're gaining essentially a Jotuns, but with 350 HP. Now, you can pretty much survive off of just this for a while, but let's say you didn't want to go there. You wanted to get so tanky, you could not die. Like, ever. Well, I would recommend one of these. This will pair you with your Gauntlets of Thebes, which have the health built into them, and this will give you essentially 90-90 bonus, total bonus protections. 90-90. That's insane. You're going to stomp people. It also gives you CDR, so you're not really missing out on anything there. And the reason I would recommend this is that if you just build these and then you go into all damage, you'll be fine. But let's say you want to be a big boy tank and you want to just like win, and your team is really good at the game and you don't have to carry. Well, then I would recommend you get this and then you immediately build into this. And then now you have your 40% CDR, you have your mana pool, and you have all your defense. And then from here, you can just keep stacking it on, and you can sell your crappy starter item, and depending on who you're going against, you can get an Ancile, or you can get a Pestilence, or you can get a Sovereignty, or you can get another bunch of defense. But currently, if your health is only at 2500, which is quite low for a warrior of level 20, I'd recommend you get something with health. So either you're going to get this hammer for some power health, or you're going to get this hammer for some power health and a nice passive, or you're going to get this item for some temporary protections, a tiny bit of health, or you're going to get this item for a lot of health and a little bit of defense, and it'll help your team. I recommend Sovereignty personally. And that's essentially how you play Chalk. If you're in the lead, you're an aggressive attack damage carry. If you're not in the lead, you're a tower camping, unkillable, like Hulk of a man, and you just stack on the defense.